Hey everybody, Brian Zane here with another classic pay-per-view review as nominated by my Patreon backers. If you're watching this on release day, Merry Christmas everyone, and if you're watching this well past December 25th, Merry Christmas, everyone. It's Christmas all the time in the world of this particular video. But you know what, no matter what time of year it is, I want you to sit down by the fire, get yourself a nice hot cup of cocoa, and enjoy my review of WCW Starrcade 1997 from December 28th at the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. This show was nominated by Jason Laraga, Daniel Howell, Joe White, Tobisaru JC, Dalton Harrell, and Christopher Umferville over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. This week is the 22-year anniversary of this show. 17,500 people packed the MCI Center, a gain of more than $540,000 and a 1.9 buy rate. It is the most successful pay-per-view WCW ever did because it was built around one specific storyline. Took more than a year and a half of build. Hollywood Hogan versus the Icon Sting for the WCW Championship. So this was the most successful pay-per-view the company ever did by the numbers, but was it the best? Well, we're about to find out. In the opening package, it's the Crow, but with Sting. He seeks the ruin of one man. Tony Schiavone, Dusty Rhodes, and Mike Tenay are on commentary. Hey, is that Christmas snow in the background? No, that's pyro residue. There was so much pyro going off at the beginning. Now everyone's going to get covered with that residue. It looks really gross. We see a lot of the WCW wrestlers who didn't get booked sitting at ringside in what they say is a show of unity. But this is a really weird look for these guys because they all look like kind of jabronis sitting around like right next to the regular fans who bought their tickets. Like Mortis wearing his mask but regular clothes from the neck down is a really weird look. Glacier staring daggers into the camera. Hugh Morris is just yucking it up with some fans. Rey Mysterio with a big wad of chew in his mouth and he's got a big smile on his face. For a second I thought it was just a fan wearing a Rey Mysterio mask in the front row. Dusty Rhodes with his opening sermon on commentary. It's destiny, baby, not of destiny. He repeats the word destiny about 800 times through the course of this show, especially in this opening monologue. Now how's this for an opening matchup here? Cruiserweight Championship on the line as Eddie Guerrero with the belt slung behind his shoulder like a real tough guy defending against Dean Malenko. Of course, these guys had a lot of history together before WCW. In ECW, they tore the house down pretty often, so we'll see how they do here in this opening match. I'm very excited to see what this will bring. Not too long before the fists begin to fly in this matchup, Eddie goes for a Hurricane Rana off the ropes, and Dean just catches him and slams him down with the sickest sounding powerbomb and an Alabama slam. That ring sounds so damn hard, and the crash that Eddie makes with his body is so devastating.
Nitro. They completely
Eddie powders, comes back for Dean's legs. Schiavone and Tenay, by the way, are just barely talking about this matchup. There's all this great stuff happening in this matchup, and the guys are calling absolutely none of it because there's all these different storylines they're trying to build for the rest of the show. Not only the match between Hogan and Sting in the main event, but also the fact that, oh, like Kevin Nash is not going to be here. More on that later. There's all these different things that have nothing to do with this match or this storyline. It's all about the NWO and WCW, and it comes to the detriment of this matchup. Eddie tries to beg off in that classic style, but Dean's having none of it. Everything they do here looks absolutely great, just flawless. It's very flashy, but a very believable manner. Guerrero kicks the steel stairs into Malenko's legs for further damage. Eddie working over Dean until a big counter by Malenko. They pull out many of the stops here. Maybe not all the stops, but many of the stops. Eddie keeps attacking the leg, hits the frog splash on the leg. Eddie wins this one and retains the championship. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This was a terrific matchup. If it got a little bit longer with a little more drama in there, I think it would have gotten a bit of a higher rating. But yeah, great way to open the show. These guys have such amazing chemistry together. Like I said, their history speaks for itself, and they keep that going with this matchup. Unfortunately, not every other match on this show is going to be the quality of this particular opener. It pretty much all goes downhill from here. After the match, Scott Hall of the NWO appears. He hits all of his big talking points at the beginning, the hey yo, the too sweet, the survey, one more for the good guys, what have you. He announces he'll be fighting the winner of Hogan and Sting at Super Brawl. That does not happen. He tells the live crowd that Kevin Nash will not be there for his match with the Giant tonight, and there's no explanation as to why, no excuses given or no kind of alternatives offered up. He's just not going to be there. So Hall wants the referee to come out and just count Nash out, award the win to the Giant. He doesn't really care, but then the Giant shows up. Giant says he's a patient man, so he'll wait for Nash to come back for their match because he's going to be in the business for a long time, as he said. And holy shit, did he ever nail that. Hall decides to attack him, but the Giant fights back. Hall sells like a madman for him. Giant destroys destroys him with a powerbomb, and that's pretty much how that segment ends. Now, as to why Kevin Nash didn't show up at Starrcade, the biggest show of the year for WCW and the biggest pay-per-view they ever did, there's a lot of conflicting stories and theories as to why Nash didn't appear. The official word is he suffered like a heart attack or symptoms of a heart attack the day before the show. He's got a family history of heart problems, so he was playing it safe. Others say that he was picking up his bag to go to the show. He forgot that one of his weights was in there, so he threw out his back in the process. Others say he just didn't want to show up because he knew he was going to be losing to the Giant and didn't want to do that. He was using his creative pull and everything. So all these different theories as to why Nash didn't show up. Where does the truth lie? Probably somewhere in the middle of all that, I would guess. They would eventually have their match at Sold Out in January, which Nash would win, of course. We go to our next match now, scheduled to be a 6-man tag match as Scott Norton, Vincent, and Conan of the NWO take on the Steiner brothers, who are the tag team champions, and Ray Traylor, formerly the Big Boss Man, Big Bubba, what have you. He was a member of the NWO, but he got kicked out a few weeks ago, so he has joined forces with the Steiners to help take on the NWO menace. Like I said, Conan was apparently supposed to be the third man on Team NWO, but he doesn't show up. Instead, it's Randy Savage making an unscheduled appearance. Got to give the rub to his fellow NWO B teammates. Which of these things is not like the other? Savage takes all day to get to the ring, jaw-jacking with everyone he can on his way there. His theme actually plays all the way to the end as he finally gets into the ring. Lots of shtick early on here. Macho still taking his time. After a while, the heels heal all over Scott Steiner. Scott comes back and throws Savage around. Savage hiding behind Liz in a great moment here. Scott just picks Liz up and just puts her to the side. Vincent, oh my God, I feel so bad for Vincent here, but I can't stop. I can't look away from this match because once Vincent gets in the ring, he gets his ass kicked. Everyone takes turns beating up Vincent here. I'm surprised that Norton and Savage didn't get a shot on them too, because he is just getting the bejesus beat out of him the entirety of this match. He'll tag out and then someone tags him right back in. Like they want him to suffer in this matchup right up until the Steiners kill him with a top rope DDT. How was that not the finish in 1997? We also get a Frankensteiner on Vincent from Scott. Scary looking bump off the top for Vincent there.
Boy, you can't do this on concrete.
Scott then goes to hit a Frankensteiner on Savage, but Norton catches him. Electric chair drop, elbow drop by Savage, and the NWO wins. I'm going to give this one 3 stars out of 5. This match, I really warmed up to it by the end. Started off really slow and old school the way they did things, but then just, I don't know, something about the way it picked up in the action, and then seeing like Virgil, Vincent, just getting murdered, to me was very entertaining in kind of like a weird Schadenfreude kind of way. Like, oh my God, like it's a car crash. I can't look away at this poor man getting the shit beat out of him by these 3 much bigger dudes. So the implications for the main event between Hogan and Sting are so big, the company's having a really hard time objectively assigning a referee to that matchup. So out comes Mean Gene Okerlund. He interviews the on-air commissioner, J.J. Dillon, who earlier in the day, they put a bunch of names of the referees in a hat, and they picked one at random to see who would be the official for the championship match, and it's Nick Patrick. But wait, you might ask, wasn't he the biased NWO referee not too long ago? There is no conflict of interest because ever since his reinstatement, Patrick's been squeaky clean, no controversies, no official problems, so he has no problem with Patrick officiating. We'll see how that plays into the finish. Up next, Goldberg making his WCW pay-per-view debut against Steve Mongo McMichael. Bit of a bitter feud with these guys for the last several weeks, beating each other up week in and week out. At one point, apparently, Goldberg stole Mongo's Super Bowl ring, and Mongo had to beat him with a pipe to get it back. Hearing Goldberg stealing Mongo's Super Bowl ring seems really out of character for him, though. They brawl to start things off. They tease a spot near a table on the outside of this setup. We will be seeing that later in the match, though. Steve takes a lot of punishment from Goldberg, but he keeps getting up. Goldberg hits the spear, and Mongo falls like a sack of shit. Goldberg setting up the table on the outside. Mongo setting himself up in front of it ever so nicely. They throw hands on the apron for a minute before Goldberg makes him fall awkwardly into the table. Mongo barely sells it. He's right back up afterward. Tries to go for a spike pile driver, but his back gives out. Goldberg hits the jackhammer to win. I give it a half star out of 5. This is a pretty ugly match. I don't know whose idea it was to give Goldberg a match that went more than 2 minutes. Goldberg and Mongo, 2 guys who aren't really known for their in-ring technical prowess and their flawless execution. But there you go. The match was what it was. Mongo falling over very awkwardly and ugly throughout the match. That was pretty much the one highlight for this whole thing. The next match is supposed to be Raven versus Chris Benoit, but before the match, Raven gets on the microphone and says that per the deal in his contract, he chooses to not wrestle tonight, on the biggest pay-per-view of the year in WCW. So he defers to his flock member Saturn, who says he will destroy Chris Benoit. Benoit then comes out and then destroys his heat with a really, really bad promo.
Quote the crippler no more. I don't look at reality through any veil, nor do I see the truth through any veil. When I rest in reason.
Wow.
When I move with passion, and there's nothing I feel more passionate about.
The whole thing played off like an E-Fed promo, like some high schooler was really trying to work their creative writing skills with this one. It was just so over the top and melodramatic and just did not fit the vibe of what Benoit did. Like, talking was never his strong suit, and talking like this definitely was not the way to go for him. Chris and Saturn work in a very intense style with each other. Everything here looks like it hurts, very convincing. They make their way to the outside after a couple attempts. The rest of the flock beat up Benoit on the outside. It is Raven's rules after all, so I think they get away with it. Saturn working over Benoit. Very nice springboard moonsault. It's a very one-sided affair for a while as things make their way to the outside again. The whole flock shows up and beat down Benoit again. Benoit avoids the Asai moonsault and Saturn takes out his teammates in the process. Benoit fights back. He confronts Raven, but then Van Hammer jumps Benoit from behind. Even flow DDT by Raven. Saturn gets the rings of Saturn locked in. Benoit's out cold and the referee calls the match. It was like okay in terms of the physicality and what in particular Benoit and Saturn did, but to me it was bogged down so much by the constant interference from the flock. And here's the thing, you've got a show which is built around WCW versus the NWO. The NWO is your main heel faction, and they're already doing run-ins throughout the night and they're getting involved in stuff. I think you muddy the waters when you have another faction, a separate thing in Raven's flock, getting involved in their match as well. It's, you know, it's kind of a mercenary kind of thing I get from the flock right now, but it's just so confusing when you've already got other heel group beatdowns from the NWO. It really makes it excessive. Another NWO versus WCW battle next as Buff Bagwell takes on Lex Luger. These two have wrestled a few times lately, with Buff actually winning 3 straight, but it's always been due to some kind of controversial thing like a DQ finish, countout finish, that sort of thing. Couple of big bulls locking horns here. Luger spits in Buff's face and Buff bumps for it. Luger shows off the power early on. Buff powders, calls upon Vincent for aid. Luger beats up Bagwell on the outside. Vinny distracts, which allows Buff to come back. Vincent cheats a lot in this matchup here. It's kind of a slower pace than everything else going on in this show. Very long chin lock that Luger eventually fights out of. Just lots of punching and kicking between these two guys, lots of stomping, not much to speak of. Back into a sleeper we go. Luger gets out of that as well. Big comeback. Vincent knocked off the apron again, then thrown off the top rope into Bagwell. We get a ref bump just before the power slam. Torture rack, but the referee is down. Randy Savage runs in and attacks Luger, but he's soon thwarted. These guys will continue their rivalry going into Sold Out the next month. Scott Norton appears, decks Luger with what appears to be Rick Steiner's dog collar. Bagwell's thrown onto Luger, the referee with a 3 count. Bagwell wins yet again. I give it 1 star out of 5. This was a hard one to watch, folks. Like, these two are the product of a kind of wrestling that either works or it doesn't, and there's no in between. I've said before on this review segment that when you have two big muscleheads fighting, it can either be a big knockdown, drag-out kind of demolition derby, you have to watch this kind of match, or it's a slow, plodding pile of shit like this one was. Just a really boring match. U.S. Championship on the line as Curt Hennig of the NWO defends against Diamond Dallas Page. He's filling in for Ric Flair, who was taken out with a leg injury by the NWO earlier. DDP with a strong beginning, but Hennig cuts him out by dropping his throat onto the top rope. Hennig working the perpetually injured ribs. I feel the DDP spent most of 97 and 98 with the taped ribs. It was even so ubiquitous with him, it was part of his character design in Revenge. Hennig also working a long chin lock in this match. Seems to be going around here. DDP gets out of it, drives Hennig's balls into the ring post, goes for a diamond cutter, but Hennig blocks it. He didn't get his shoulders back or his chest out. Both guys have worn each other down. Hennig sends DDP into the ropes. Page hits the float over diamond cutter out of nowhere at ease. DDP wins and is the new U.S. champion. I give it 3 stars out of 5. It's a pretty solid matchup here. It's not an amazing contest, but it's not boring by any means either. You know, they have a good pace here. They tell a good story. Creative little finish at the end. Extra points from me for there being no run-ins or their kind of bullshit finish in this matchup here. Probably my second favorite match on this show behind the opener with Guerrero Malenko. In your semi-main event for control of Nitro, you have the living legend Larry Zbyszko fighting for WCW as he takes on the president of WCW and the leader of the NWO, Eazy-E, Eric Bischoff. And not only are those implications huge, Bret the Hitman Hart making his WCW pay-per-view debut as the guest referee, fresh off of his controversial exit from the WWF in Montreal, ready to make a big impact in WCW. Let's see how they fuck it up. Bischoff's accompanied by Scott Hall making his second appearance of the night. Eric's wearing his karate pants and his fighting gloves, little clamshell covers on his feet. He's ready for war. As the match begins, he gets a quick shot on Zbyszko and celebrates as if he's won the whole match. He does get the first takedown, Zbyszko, though, with a kick to the head. Larry shrugs it off, starts beating up on Eazy-E here, and the whole story is that for whatever reason, Bret Hart seems to be very biased toward Bischoff. He's really reprimanding Zbyszko for a lot of little ticky-tack stuff. Well, he's letting a lot go for Bischoff here. Bischoff has offered him to join the NWO, so that's kind of the driving force with this storyline here. Will he join? All signs so far seem to be pointing that he is going to be joining Bischoff here. Bischoff's beaten up on the outside, more arguing between Bret and Larry, another kick by Eric, and now all of a sudden Bischoff's laying into him with kicks and punches, really working over Zbyszko here, but it's all part of an elaborate plan. Larry's doing the rope-a-dope, hoping to wear Bischoff out, which allows Zbyszko to make a big comeback. Larry puts Bischoff in the Tree of Woe, but Bret Hart stops him from doing anything. While that's going on, Hall slides a metal object in Bischoff's boot. Bischoff with the kick, and the foreign object just flies out of his boot and into the 10th row. I hope it didn't hurt anyone. It looks as though Bret's going to congratulate Bischoff, then he just beats him up. It was a swerve for some reason. He beats up Scott Hall. Hall keeps selling like a goof. Sharpshooter on Hall, and while that's going on, Zbyszko grabs Eric's black belt and starts strangling Bischoff with his own black belt. That is some graphic stuff there. When they're done, Bret just then raises Larry's hand. I guess the match is over now. WCW wins the rights to Nitro. Larry Zbyszko's earned a right to fight Scott Hall the next month at Sold Out. I give it 1 star out of 5. It's one of those confusing things where it's more of a spectacle than a match. Like, can you really fairly grade the match based on its quality when you've got a non-wrestler going against Larry Zbyszko, and then there's the wild card of Bret Hart being involved as a referee? You know, as far as like an actual match goes, not a very good match. It's a lot. There's lots of unintentional comedy in this one. Kind of a confusing performance, but for the story involved of, you know, Zbyszko doing the rope-a-dope and Bret Hart swerving Bischoff at the end after trying to like, build up his confidence, that kind of helped it increase the score a little bit. Then the weird non-ending just kind of took me out of it again. It's now time for the much ballyhooed main event, 18 months in the making, not of Destiny Daddy. WCW Championship on the line as Hollywood Hogan defense against the man called Sting. All the way back to Bash the Beach 1996 when the NWO formed and the group started expanding, running roughshod through WCW. If a wrestler wasn't getting beaten up by the NWO, they were joining them and it was becoming super excessive. Early on this whole process, Sting's loyalty to WCW was being questioned. There were accusations he was part of the NWO. There was a fake NWO Sting at one point, but Sting just had it with all the rumors, and he's had it with the accusations from his friends and fans and the company, so he splits. Then for the next 18 months, we see him sitting up in the rafters with new face paint and the trench coat. This was all he did for a year and a half. He did not wrestle a single match, just showed up in the rafters, waiting and being kind of the eye of justice, looking down upon the NWO. And for months, fans were waiting for him to strike, and he finally did in time for Starrcade, so everything was building up to this one match on this one night. From Bash the Beach 96 to Starrcade 97, it all came down to this. During Sting's entrance, we get this laser light show on mesh, really hard to see, at least on television. It's narrated by a child who has the same kind of delivery as the NWO's Neil Pruitt.
When a man's heart is full of deceit, it burns up, dies.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
The best part of the match, honestly, is the entrance. It's so iconic to see Sting, that long walk down the ramp. My favorite part is the shot where they have Hogan cross dissolve kind of halfway on the shot. So half Hogan, half Sting. Really cool look there. The match begins with lots and lots of shtick. Sting with a couple of shots early on. Hogan's flustered. He throws some drop kicks, sending Hogan out of the ring. These guys are just taking their time with this one. And there's a difference, I think, between, you know, working a slower pace, milking the crowd and everything, and then just working too slow a pace and getting boring. That's where they're heading with this one. Hogan with a lot of offense in this match. Way too much offense here. You know, he is the heel, and I know the heel does take most, he just gives most of the offense in a matchup, but it's way too one-sided. Sting looks like he's kind of a zombie here. He's not really putting up his dukes, not fighting back much at all here. Hogan cuts off Sting and they fight toward the outside, straight up hits Sting with his own bat. Sting goes to the splash, but Hogan moves right into the barricade. Hogan works over Sting some more, hits the boot, the leg drop, the 3 count by Nick Patrick, and that's it. Sting stays down, does not kick out. Hogan wins clean in the middle of the ring after 18 months of build. What in the fuck happened? Well, apparently it wasn't supposed to go down like that, because the rumor is, you know, the story was supposed to be Patrick gets down, does a fast count, because he's NWO for life, brother. But he instead, as he's doing, it's just Regular 3 count, regular ass 3 count, no speed to it at all. So Sting looks like a total loser, not kicking out of all the beating that Hogan gave him. So as far as to what caused the slow count, you know, there's all these different stories. You know, Nick Patrick's changed his story a couple of times. Basically, it's all chalked up to big miscommunication. You know, Patrick has said, oh, Bischoff told me one thing, Hogan told me something else. I couldn't find a third party to figure out what the actual finish was supposed to be. You know, the rumor is Hogan politicked his way for Patrick to do the slow count. Even if you believe that or not, basically it all comes down to a big miscommunication. But what a really bad time for that miscommunication, because this totally blows up 18 months of build and makes everything in the next few minutes following it make complete lack of sense. Before Dave Penzer can ring the bell, Bret Hart stops him saying, "It's not going to happen again. No more prima donnas, no more screw jobs." The Hitman hits Patrick, who does an amazing sell with his arms. Bret throws Hogan back into the ring, and as the match restarted, though he has no authority, a pair of Stinger splashes, Sting fights off the NWO goons, Scorpion Deathlock, Hogan submits, and Sting wins. The locker room comes out to celebrate. Now it's like Hogan got screwed over, and Sting and WCW and Bret Hart look like big old jerks here. Sting had to get help in order to win this matchup. What the hell? Legend has it Hogan was second-guessing the finish after seeing Sting come to the arena that night and seeing he was out of shape. You know, which he probably wasn't the best shape of his life, though, because he was at the peak of his addiction to, you know, alcohol and painkillers at the time. So he wasn't wrestling regularly, so he probably wasn't hitting the gym that much. So yeah, Sting probably not in the best shape of his life, but why would Hogan willingly sabotage the finish and the blow-off to this tremendous storyline because, oh, we didn't think that Sting could hang? Like, could you not, like, just kind of put your pride aside and, like, let the finish happen and get the blow-off you need to make good business and then, like, work out the problems later? That, to me, seems like what they probably should have done in that span. But, you know, God, it's just, you know, we'll never know the true story to what really went down with this show, whether it's a misunderstanding, whether it's miscommunication, whether it's politics, all these different things that have really just darkened what was supposed to be this ultimate vindication, the ultimate validation for WCW. Like, boom, like the end of this months-long, year-and-a-half-long storyline, and it gets totally fucked up near the end with a bad 3 count, making everything else after it look like WCW are the total heels here, and Hogan is the victim. Complete role reversal, but that was not what was supposed to happen. This is how it all came off. It just is not a great way to end the show, but yay WCW! I give the match 1 star out of 5. When you think about matches that didn't live up to the hype, like this one by far is the all-time textbook definition of that kind of concept. It was a slow match, first of all, too slow for its own good, the layout of which made no sense from a storytelling perspective. Why would you have Sting take all the beating and almost give none of it back to Hogan when the opposite is what we all wanted to see? We wanted to see Sting beat the hell out of Hollywood Hogan, and we didn't even get that. Not barely even in the finish after the botched ending. That was what also brought it down. Slow pace, bad layout, botched ending, the whole thing was ruined. All this goodwill built up for 18 months, really just down the drain in an instant here. If they had changed 1 or 2 things about this matchup, maybe the match wouldn't have been like the 5-star classic that they hyped it up to be, but it would have been closer to that than what we got in this matchup. And of course, the big kicker is it was all for nothing. Sting winning the belt here, you know, oh yay, WCW. Oh no, the next week on Thunder, the belt's taken off him because, oh, he won under controversial circumstances. So he had to fight Hogan again at Super Bowl to win the belt, which he did. But man, like, what a completely messed up way to go about this whole thing. My final grade for Starrcade 97 is a D+. This show has 1 great match, a couple of good matches, and everything else is a total slog. And really what makes this score so bad is the fact that the execution of their main event was so poor. It is the one thing they spent 18 months building the entire show around. WCW versus NWO, Hogan versus Sting. That was the goal. And then it was executed so poorly, and it really brings down the whole vibe of the entire show. How is it the opener was the strongest point of the show and it just goes on a downhill slope from there? Absolutely crazy, and especially when you consider that Sting was stripped of the belt not more than 2 weeks after this, the whole thing is for naught. It is still an iconic show because of the blow-off of this huge storyline, and it's something we've never seen attempted since then, probably never will see again, that kind of storytelling, that kind of pacing, that kind of build. That's a long time. You know, 3 months is an eternity for wrestling nowadays. Can you imagine an 18-month storyline happening today? It's impossible. Would never happen. But it was a big missed opportunity. The fact this show really failed to deliver, it really made you, it was one of the first signs you saw that maybe WCW didn't have all the answers against the World Wrestling Federation in the Monday Night War. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review of Starrcade 97. If you want to play a role in determining which shows I look at, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the chance to nominate classic shows for me to review. And the next time on this segment, it will be a classic show indeed. It's the Royal Rumble 1992. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.